Please back your college. Don't tell me your college is better.
Yes, sir. No, not saying, sir. Join.
Join.
Yes. EMBA team.
Yeah, okay. So right, okay. Good morning, guys online. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Guys online?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me? Is it?
Yes.
Yes.
This doesn't have video. Okay, so last couple of sessions I've been talking about what is organizational theory, and we talked about diversity and inclusion, and then I talked about personality and what else? Emotions and moods. Those are the 4 areas we talked about. I actually skipped.
अब अल्टीमेटली वही है सारे हम लोग बेवकूफ हैं वही चीज हम लोग बार बार देखते हैं
So first, if you are not saying anything, please mute yourselves.
वो ठीक है बस आप भूल जाओ
Mr. Bangira. Yeah, thank you. So today we'll talk about attitudes and then talk about motivation, which is of course very important. Why would we be talking about attitude? Any idea?
To feel and behave in a particular way. What is something?
So feel and behave in a particular way. Okay. Why else? Why is attitude so important? I think I mentioned it briefly in my last class. Why is attitude so critical for us? So people, like you have seen, the Upanishads have been talking about attitude from about 6,000 years. So attitude has spiked people's interest for a long time. Why?
So because that will your attitude will show who you are and probably so the next time you will think about
So yeah, you make a good point, but why should I really know about you if I'm speaking? What is more important?
The presence. Attitude, presence, the personality. Attitude determines the attitude of life. Attitude determines the attitude of life. So attitude influences
What does attitude determine? Why are we so interested in this?
The way we respond or the way we react to the situations, attitude matters.
Okay, that's good. The way we respond and the way we sort of
the way we can see ourselves, empathy, we can say that.
So, for example, suppose you know, when I go on my morning walks, one of my favorite pastimes is all the stray dogs are my pets, right? And so we sort of talk to those dogs 5 minutes, and then we move on in my life. The point is that suppose you saw somebody kicking a dog, would it trigger a thought in your head? Yes. Yeah. So that's an attitude. You have an attitude towards people who kick stray dogs. So what? So what? So you have an attitude. So suppose you like stray dog and you find that this guy is kicking a stray dog. How do you think I'm going to react to him?
First will be one.
Warn him.
You will one.
Don't do it again.
Next will be
Back on the face.
next will be same action.
Really? Okay.
So that is
Yeah, so this is like, you know, my son's classmate's boyfriend who was in Bengaluru for his marriage. The next day, he got into an argument with the policeman. And despite the policeman telling him that he was a policeman, he beat him up. And landed in jail. Took a lot of money and effort to get him out for his marriage. But anyway, so the point is you describe an action. And that is why we are concerned with, right or wrong, to describe an action. That's why we are concerned with attitude. So all attitudes end up in some kind of action. They generally don't stay just as a thought. And the more influenced you are by an attitude, the more swift and thoughtless is your action. And so if it is anchored very deeply in your psyche, then you react very swiftly and very vigorously. So you can have an attitude towards people of a certain region, and you can have an attitude towards. So if you ask a lot of people here, they will say North Indians are invading Bengaluru, and you know that's an attitude. Yeah, and or they say that you can have an attitude towards somebody else's religion. And the less educated you are, the deeper are these kinds of attitudes. When you're not able to reflect and think. So attitude is actually one of the more important things that you should be concerned about when people come into your organization. What kind of attitudes they carry, because it will result in certain kinds of action and maybe disturb the peace around you. It could create conflict in the team and it could create other kinds of problems. So good. And like I said, attitude has been around for several hundreds of years, maybe a few thousand years. So we will do some. What are the learning objectives? Contrast three components of an attitude. Compare major job attitudes. How does job attitude, impact job satisfaction? Why we consider it job satisfaction? I think we talked about it in the last class. Why are we concerned with job satisfaction? Because I want to disabuse you of some ideas. So I'm asking you this question. Why are we concerned about job satisfaction? Related to attrition. Yes. It's not related to productivity. Yeah, you can have dissatisfied people who are very productive, and you can have very satisfied people who are not productive at all. So satisfaction is very direct correlation with turnover in an organization. And if you're concerned with turnover, and like the other day I had gone to a Tata company sometime back, and they were saying they have 2% attrition, which I think is a problem. It means you've got a lot of useless people hanging on. Yeah. I think a healthy attrition is about between 8 and 10%. So, summarize the main causes of job satisfaction. outcomes of job satisfaction and what are some employee responses to dissatisfaction. So what are some risks? Why should we be concerned with dissatisfaction? One is a fellow will leave. The problem is if he doesn't leave and stays, it leads to what is called as dysfunctional behavior. What is dysfunctional behavior? Have you heard this term, dysfunctional behavior? What does it mean? They would influence others. Yes. So, for example, you are my superior, I don't like you. I can say that, I saw this guy, I'm with the secretary, watching the movie. So that is the mildest form of dysfunctional behavior. Yeah, and I can spread a rumor, gossip. So gossip is generally at low level, low key, but it is dysfunctional. It is a starting sign of progress. Yeah. At the extreme end, dysfunctional behavior is you carry a gun and shoot somebody in an office, which happens in the United States because guns are accessible. Or somebody could be assaulted. Yeah, or somebody could be molested. All signs of dysfunctional behavior. And it comes from dissatisfaction, disgruntlement, and so on. The other day, I was speaking to somebody from Hewlett Packard. And an old incident, maybe at the time when some of you were born, of this lady who unfortunately got into a cab and he was molested. I don't know if you recollect the story. It was the first case. She worked with the BPO in HP and she got into a cab and she was alone. So if many of you are traveling by cabs and you feel safer today, you can actually thank that Pratima who paid for it in her life. And she was taken to an isolated spot and she was molested and killed. That's not the story. That is, of course, the tragic part of the story. So I was telling this guy I was talking to that what I was disappointed with was what happened to the CEO. The CEO was a guy called Som Mittal, who made big bucks, of course. Som Mittal got 1 day suspended sentence in jail. The Bangalore High Court gave him a 1 day suspended sentence. That means he's sentenced, but he will not go to jail. You think it's fair? One of his employees was raped and killed, got 1 day suspended sentence. You think it's fair or not fair? Not fair? You think he should have gone to jail? For how long? So that's an attitude. Yeah. So if I was the judge, luckily I was not, I would have probably sentenced him to a couple of years in jail. What do you think? I want your thoughts. Was Som Mittal responsible for this lady's death?
If it was the
That was what time she was going home. She finished her shift and she was going home. So, what do you think? Yeah, all this day, Chief, I'm asking a straightforward question. Should the CEO have gone to jail because one of his employees was raped and killed? Yes, sir. What is your thought? That's what makes an MBA interesting. I want to know what you think. So, no?
I mean, yeah, you should have at least other to the court.
No, here, 1 day suspended sentence. He pays some fine. Stop.
You have been sentenced.
Make an example of this fellow. Very good.
Directly make improve towards the administration process to send everything.
Yeah, all that happened. All that happened. I am staying with Mr. Som Mittal and asking you whether he should have been put in jail or not. I'll give you another story of a friend of mine who was, I don't know that I told you this story. Yeah, but this guy was sailing to Korea. right? And he was going to the Straits of Taiwan. You know what Straits of Taiwan are? Between mainland, so you know where Taiwan is? Chinese Taipei. So it is off the mainland China, and there's a narrow stretch of sea, and he was sort of, his ship was navigating. And it was about 12:15 in the morning, 0015. And you have generally the youngest guy on the ship at that point in time navigating, the youngest officer. Or junior most officer, let's put that. And this junior most officer saw a fishing boat sinking. There had 4 people in it, clear signs that they were in distress. The marine code says that anybody in distress was supposed to go to their assistance. Yeah. But this young officer decided to scare himself. He thought it's not worth his while to divert course and go and assist these people. So he went. 4 o'clock, somebody else came and relieved him. He did not inform this person, nor did he make a logbook entry. 8 o'clock, the captain arrives in the navigating area. So because the previous guy did not know, the captain did not also know. 4 people perished. The ship reached South Korea, and satellite imagery picked it up. It was arrested. The ship was arrested. The captain was arrested. It went to court. Interestingly, the court said that you are sentenced to 10 years in jail for 2nd-degree murder. So the captain said in his defense, I did not know. Nobody told me. So the judge said something very interesting. He said, as captain, you should have had better people on your ship. You should have trained them better. So when I come from a background like that, I have very strong feelings about this mechanism called So Mittal, who actually got it as hot free for a woman employee of his who died and in a tragic fashion. So you can have that's an attitude again. So that's the point I was trying to do. So you can have disgruntled employees who will do give that smile as if you are returning from conquering something after coming late. So there is all the IT fellows and this. Right now. You are in the IT now. So that's an attitude again. Yeah. So attitudes are evaluative statements, either favorable or unfavorable, about objects, people, or events. They reflect how we feel about. That's the problem. We are human beings. We feel about something all the time, and it starts affecting our behavior. And it sort of impacts when people with different attitudes come together in a constrained space like an office to have a problem. Yeah.
So that is that the college is going to show a sentence on.
I would have sentenced him. So, for example, there's a very famous case which is there, called Enron. So, Enron was one of the biggest scams of the century. It destroyed many poor Americans who had invested their money in Enron. And the 2 people who were responsible was Kenneth Lay and Jeffrey Skilling. So, I think Kenneth Lay's father was a padri. He came from a very religious family, well educated. Skilling's went to Harvard Business. Yeah, and these 2 people defrauded several hundreds of thousands of Americans. And when the judge was about to sentence them, yeah, one poor lady, old lady, and her daughter came and said that, Judge, we want to state that because of these 2 people, we are now living in a tent in a public area because we lost our entire savings. And the judge sentenced both these people to 30 years in jail. Yeah, one of them has died in jail. Other fellow will come out after 30 years. Their life is virtually over. So again, the judge took this very seriously. Creating fraud, what about Capt Nagaraj? Very serious. Capt Nagaraj is in jail. He's sitting in some farmhouse somewhere. Yeah, exactly the same. So the attitude of judges in the United States is quite different towards people who defraud poor people, particularly. So had Vijay Mallya been in the United States, by now he would have been in Guantanamo with all those, Al Qaeda terrorists. Well, it's India, and we have a more softer approach towards all these guys. Yeah, answer your question. So, this is very important. What are the three components of an attitude? So, one is, of course, the affective or the feeling, the behavioral or action, or the cognitive or evaluation. So, for example, you are expecting a promotion and you are not. What goes through your mind? My boss is biased. Yeah? Does it lead to some action? Then it leads. Either you go and complain to his bosses, your boss's boss, or you leave the organization and you have intense emotions or feelings. So those are the three things that happen in the components of an attitude. So I have not been promoted by my boss or supervisor, so I dislike him. That's the affective feeling or affective or feeling part of the whole compendium. And you evaluate it. My superior gave a promotion to a co-worker who deserved it less than I did. My supervisor is unfair. Yeah? So that is the cognitive or value. Cognition is the thinking part. Yeah? So, and the third is the behavioral action. I'm looking for other work. I've complained about my supervisor. Anyone who listen? They did not listen. So I'm leaving and going and joining some other organization. Yeah. So attitude has pretty much these three components. We call it the ABC part of. We did not follow that order. Yeah. So, so generally, what we have talked about thus far is action or behavior follows a thought process. Right? Can it be anywhere else? If you think about it, can the reverse also hold true? Can behavior affect your thought process or attitude? We're talking about attitude leading to. What I'm saying is, can behavior affect your attitude? So there was a very interesting experiment by a guy called Leon Festinger, who actually did this. He wanted to see whether behaviors can affect attitude. What do you guys think? Give me an example. Your example, or any example you want. So, for example, just think about it. Suppose you hate people of a different religion. That's a attitude. Yeah, I'm not talking about. Stop thinking about everything as good and bad. Yeah, there is no good and bad. There are reality and gray areas. So several people have an attitude towards people of some other religions. Now, you are caught in a riot and you are running for your life. And somebody from that other side help you to escape and live. Do you think it will affect your attitude? Yeah. So Leon Festinger actually showed that actions or behavior or the end result can affect your attitude, change it. And I found this very interesting where, several years back, of course, today there are more Indians in the United States. But when I was growing up, A lot of people have opinions about the United States, mostly I think out of frustration, saying that it's a nasty country, everybody divorces each other, they drink all the time, they have no culture, kids are kicked out at 18. And then lo and behold, their children who had lived in United States. So they go for one trip there for acting as a nurse for their children's kids or whatever. They come back and you've seen a shift in their thought process on the United States. So okay. So Leon Festinger, cases of attitudes following behavior illustrate the effects of cognitive. The attitudes that people determine what they do. Cognitive dissonance is an incompatibility an individual might perceive between two or more attitudes. So okay, we talked about emotional labor last time, and Festinger also talked about something called as cognitive dissonance. So I took an example of, say, you're walking down and you saw, you're very fond of stray dogs, you found somebody kicking a stray dog, right? Now, like our friend there said that he's going to warn him first and then hit him next time. Yeah? Just but think about it, this is practical. This is practical. It's not, because that guy will respond. So when my kid was small, he said, I want to join the army. So I said, why do you want to join the army? He said, I can shoot the enemy soldiers. So I said, do you ever think about the fact that they will shoot back at you? He said, really, they shoot back? I said, of course. He lost all interest in the army. Yeah. So obviously the guy will respond. If you want to smack him across the face, yeah. So what do many people do? They will go and shake his hand and say, good thing you did by kicking the dog on the nose. But does that make you feel good? So that is cognitive dissonance. So many times when you're driving, you find somebody driving very and somebody's cut you off or they honk. What do? You just swallow. You kind of very angry and you sort of say, what a lousy driver this is. But you swallow that and then you sort of keep going. Right? And that is cognitive dissonance. That is, it starts eating you up. It leads to stress and eventually leads to several other health issues. Research has generally concluded that people seek consistency among their attitudes and between their attitudes and their behavior. Why? Why? Why do you do that? Why don't you go and kick that fellow on the face who kicked the dog? Why do you shake his hand and say, good job, mate, and move on? Most of us do that. Why? First thing is, what made him kick the dog? Because it's nasty. That's it. No. But why did you shake his hand?
Consequences of if I suddenly go and want him a meeting, will be different consequences. And if I go and shake the hand and then if I say that not to do
Good job.
not to do this. So again there is a consequence of different actions for the two different ways of.
And why? Why did you adopt this methodology?
Irrational thinking is that we should have interest in the past.
Possible? Yes. The consequence is a bit. What else?
Person will immediately react to us.
Yes. But what's the more important thing? I'm looking for that right answer.
And ultimately, the end result will not be a good if we do, if we go and hit him.
Okay. But what else? Why is the we discuss that? Nasty. Let's not try to provide context for everything. Why did Hitler kill 6.5 million? Let's try to find out. What else? Why do people sort of moderate their behavior? Now, let me give you a story from my own experience several years back. Again, I got just one son, so much of it revolves around him. And when he was going to school, he was generally a non-complaining kid. Went to school quietly and came out late. So one day he came and said that his tiffin box was being thrown in the bus. I was on leave, I was a little alarmed, and I asked him exactly what's going on. So he said, no, there's this older boy, set of boys who are taking my tiffin box and throwing it. So I said, have you told the bus where? He said, yes. What happened now? So I said, okay, I'll come. So I went and met the teacher and said that somebody is, yes sir, can I help you? Close to me. Paid fees, right? So try to come on time. Despite paying fees. So I went and told the teacher, and the teacher said boys will be boys or something, right? And which I did not think was a reasonable answer. And this went on for 5-6 days. So one day on my walk, I went there, was waiting there, and I carry a stick, a baton. Even now, when I go for a walk, it's a very serious looking stick. And I got into the bus, I identified those 3 boys. I told them that once more, if I hear a complaint from my son, you will get the short end of this. It has a large brass knob at one end, like the military does. So you're going to get this. To think about it. Stop. Things return to peaceful way, everything. But the question here is, first of all, I think this is unusual behavior. Entering into a bus and threatening 3 people with a stick. This extreme behavior. Why do you think this happened? Suppose you reflect upon this. Why do you think it happened? Because of independent question. Definitely yes. Why else?
We didn't find any other solution.
I didn't find
teachers.
Yes. Yes.
I would also.
So the word went around that Gautam's father is a very violent fellow. So the 2 things happened here. One, many people moderate their behavior because they are concerned about social norms. You moderate your behavior because you are concerned what does society think if I indulge in this kind of behavior in a public space. And so we tolerate a lot of nonsense. Those days I had a short fuse for social norms. Yeah, I spent my time in ships mostly, and the civility of civilization had not dawned on me fully yet. Yeah, maybe as a professor I would not have done. Yeah, that is one. 2 is what? What else could be a reason why I did this?
It should not be repeated.
Obviously. That's the general intent, that's the end result. But why do you think I adopted this extreme behavior?
But
you tried your things to solve
Yeah, out of the box. What else?
you really wanted to get the things first.
Obviously, right. But what was a trigger for this kind of behavior?
What's the same year?
Positive, very good, yes. What else? Also, interestingly, that if I reflect on my school days, I was also ruthlessly bullied. And I did not have a defense. Yeah, I actually had to absorb a lot of bullying from older people. Yeah, and I did not have a defense, so I had determined that this is not going to happen to my son. Yeah, and it's very interesting that, like I told you a few months back, I had gone to, I think I told you in the last class, I had gone to Madras, and this one of those fellows who had really famous. I was trying to patch up with me and I couldn't do FO. Sorry to use you, but that's how it is. That's how I am. So the fact of the matter is that attitudes are governed by several things. More importantly, social norms. All of you feel murderous thoughts, but social norms generally, if you are in control of yourself, social norms allow you to sort of keep it under check. Also, how readily available it is to you. Why did I react violently to the bullying? Because I was bullied. So the memory is very recent, and the memory is top of the line. It's there in my head all the time. I will not, even I step in now. If I see somebody bullying a smaller guy, I will step in. That need not be related to me. But I don't like. So it's a very strong attitude based out of my own experience. Yeah. And that's how attitudes actually come into our system. Things that you heard from your parents, grandparents, friends, people you hang out with, your own direct experiences, and so on and so forth. That is why I was telling Ashwini here that the more you read and the more you reflect, you can actually moderate some of these attitudes, and you can have a more balanced view of life. Yeah. Otherwise, your attitudes are going to get you. So, which brings us to the summary. That is, what are the moderating variables of your behavior? One is, of course, the attitude's importance. Like I said, the importance is very much to be of bullying. Correspondence to behavior. Accessibility. How much of it you remember? Accessibility. How much of it you remember? School. So it's very strong, very accessible. Presence of social pressures. Social pressures. I didn't care too much of social pressure those days. Yeah. So I acted the way I acted. Whether a person has direct experience with attitude. So you can see that you can tick all these boxes in my own behavior in response to attitude as a to bullying. Yeah? So if people have strong attitudes, you can actually expect some action. Yeah, that's why it's not a good practice to discuss politics and religion. With people who are not, because there's no logic. Yeah, politics and religion are what? What is it? It's faith. Yeah, you believe in something and you're ready to. More people have been killed in the name of religion than anything else. Because it's very strong faith and people have strong attitudes which corresponds to behavior. So the attitude behavior relationship is likely to be much stronger if an attitude refers to something with which we have direct personal experience. So do any of you have strong attitudes towards something? So some of you may have come from, say, rural Karnataka, say the Western Ghats, where you lived amongst greenery, trees, and so you feel very bad and you have to go and live in that place called Whitefield, where nothing grows. Yeah? How many people live in Whitefield? So no self-respecting South Bangalore will ever go to Whitefield. So you have a strong attitude dependent on your own childhood and your own sort of what you have experienced in life as a kid and so on and so forth. I hope this is clear. Yeah, but please be aware. That's why you have attitudinal questions and behavioral questions in interviews. I don't know, consciously or unconsciously, several of you will have answered this question because I don't know whether the interviewer knows what he's asking. That's a different story altogether. Some of the interviews I see nowadays are duffers. So I don't know what question they are asking us and selecting. But nevertheless, they are trying to check what kind of an attitude this is the because this could have serious consequences. So attitude predicts behavior. Please be very clear about that. And it can be the other way around also, like testing the shoulders. So, what are some of the major job attitudes, job satisfaction, positive feeling about the job resulting from an evaluation of its? So we'll talk more about it when we talk about motivation. What motivates a person in the job? What is it, madam? What motivates you in the job? Okay. What else? Anybody other than pay? Respect. Okay. Other day I was firing professor, he said, "Sir, show me some respect." I said, "Okay, I show you respect, but it will talk down." So respect is important. What else? Recognition. Okay. Should like the work what you are doing. Why do you like the job? Because there is no work at all. A lot of money or something else.
Work-life balance.
Work-life balance. Okay. Good. What else?
Is that
Position. Yeah. What else? Yeah. Culture of the organization. Okay. What else?
Freedom to express your thoughts.
Freedom to express your thoughts. Very good. Autonomy. Excellent. Okay. What else? Is autonomy important to you? Freedom. So we're getting into the really deep part of motivation. So motivation generally we have found is not about money. Not about. So I asked my students, suppose you had to join Infosys at 30,000 rupees as a supervisor. Your designation is supervisor. And you have to join Gokul Das Images at 40,000 rupees and we got senior vice president. What would you do? Where would you do? We have a problem with this kind of question. Yeah, because it's a reflection of several things. So anyway, we'll come to that a little later. But people have found that what yields the greatest amount of satisfaction is the quality of the job. Yeah. So I tell many examples, stop taking people for these handworks Friday parties and then drinking binges on Friday evening, cricket matches, and so on and so forth. It really doesn't matter in the long term. What matters is I love this job. Why? Because it's freedom, it's free. I can do pretty much what I can teach this course in several ways. That kind of freedom you don't have in many professions. And you do your job well, hardly anybody asks you what you are doing. Yeah. So
the articles designing the job.
Designing the job. I talked about it.
Yeah, so this possible.
True. So it's called the job characteristic model. And people must be concerned about. So, for example, there's this company called DHL. Are you aware? So DHL had a serious problem. They had a problem because one of their major strike force, that is their drivers, were resigning in large numbers. And they couldn't figure out why. Because the drivers were very well paid, extremely well paid. And they got a consultant, several consultants, they couldn't figure out, and they asked the driver, why are you resigning? He was not happy. Then one smart young guy came and said, look, I think I know the problem. So the job of a driver in DHL was he not only had to deliver the courier, he also had to load it. Yeah, and they said, okay, take away the loading part of it from the driver's job. Don't get him to load it. Don't get him to think that he's kind of cooling. And actually, attrition rates drop. So the quality of the job itself and what they do has serious bearing on job satisfaction levels. Yeah. So job involvement, degree to which a person identifies with the job. Do you identify with your job or are you there just for the money? What do you do? You like the job or you're there for the money? And you like the money. Okay. So several people are in jobs because they like the the money. This could also be a little bit of a problem. And if you're not involved in the job and what is psychological empowerment? Okay, several people have problems with psychological empowerment. Do you think I like teaching? Yes. Why? Why do you think I like teaching? What else? What is one main reason why I like teaching? I don't have to teach us.
You want to teach students to
Why do you think? Please answer that question. Why do you think? You say you're the best. I think I'm the best. I think that I've got total control over subject. No problem. You can challenge me to anything in the class. I have no fear. I am psychologically. If you want to enjoy your job, better be psychologically empowered. If you go to office every day scared as to what is going to turn up today, you are going to face burnout soon. Yeah, that is why people are stressed. Because they are afraid. They are not psychologically empowered. How do you get psychologically empowered? First of all, go into jobs that you think you're good at. Yeah. Secondly, work damn hard at it. I come prepared for every class. I read the day before. I read several things, although I can teach OB in my sleep. But still, I come prepared for teaching the course. So, be prepared and work very hard at something that you like. Yes, I like to influence young people. I have a passion for teaching and so on and so forth. But nevertheless, if you are not psychologically empowered, you're going to have a problem. I can assure you that much. Yeah? So belief in the degree of influence over one's job, competence, job meaningfulness, and autonomy. So I have got a lot of autonomy. I think this is one of the most meaningful jobs because I'm influencing the future generation. So I gave Ashwini some gyan in the morning, right? Soon I will forget about it. But I'm sure she will remember. 5 years hence, she will say, I had this conversation with the dean about, he talked about something for 5-7 minutes. And my students who I have taught, say, about 15 years back, actually remember conversations that we have had. And I've actually even forgotten about several of their existence. I see them sometimes on Facebook or Instagram or somewhere. But it's a very impactful job. So the meaningfulness of the job is there. I am competent and I have influence over my job. And that's why you can see that by and large I enjoy what I do. If you want to enjoy what you are doing, be and have people. So, for example, when they hire in companies like Google, they make sure this is very important. People are psyched. They don't want fellows who come and beep all the time. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. Can you help me? And so on and so forth. They want some people, but that's why their testing process is so rock solid. Very, very deep layers of testing before they hire somebody because they want psychologically empowered people. Organizational commitment. Are you committed to your organizations? Yeah. And so what is organizational commitment?
Talking towards the goals and values of the company.
Correct. So you can have several kinds of commitment. One is I'm committed to my company because I won't get a loan. So economic. Some of us in that happy position. I'm really happy with this company. Why? Because nobody else will give me a job. Yeah. Yeah. So Yeah, where was I? Oh, sorry. So lost my train. Yeah, one is of course economic commitment part of it. And the second part of commitment is when you deeply believe in the values of your organization. For example, the Indian Army. People believe, what do they believe in? If you go and talk to, so we used to run a lot of defense programs, and one of our professors once went in, he was teaching a group of Subedars. You know Subedar? Subedar is the connection between the officers and the lower rank. These are important people. Subedar Major is only the commanding officer and Subedar Major can separate on in the armed forces. So he was teaching and he goes into the class and he says that, I think that the Indian Army is a waste of time. It is a tax, given the taxpayers. And he made this statement. There was a stunned silence. And next week I was summoned rapidly. And I went there. Several of these guys had surrounded this professor and were about to beat him up. Had I not intervened. So there's a strong belief in the values. Yeah? So some organizations like say Infosys, right? So people in the old days, not now, those Narayan Murthy's era, people believed in the. So I had a very interesting experience once, about 15 years back. The nice road, right? Had just opened, and I had forgotten my wallet in the my college, and I came to the toll gate and did not have money. And I called my wife, who was the other end of the nice road, and said, "Can you come and pick me up?" He said, "I'm busy. Manage you're a smart guy, manage to be something." So I said, "Okay, now what should I do?" So I asked that person, "I'll come and give you the money tomorrow." And he said, "Go take a hike." Nothing like that. So I saw two fellows standing by the side of the road, and I said, "Look, I'll make a deal with you. I will drop you on the other side. Please pay my." I explained the situation. So they said, "No, we don't want to live from this because we're waiting for a friend of ours. However, we will pay your." Thank you. So they said, "We are engineers at Infosys." So I took their name, put it down there, and they paid my toll. I went on. I didn't stop there. One of my neighbors was a vice president of Infosys. So I told him, explained the situation. He got very excited. He said, "Captain, this is how import things are. This is what we believe in. This is our value system." But I could see the pride that he had in that. That is another level of commitment. You have old people who work in, say, Larsen and Toubro had this value system. They believed the values of the organization. And finally, you have something, you have commitment because of obligation, where you feel obliged to an organization. And this is where actually you want your efforts. And the very interesting case of a guy called Charles Steinmetz. Have you heard of Charles Steinmetz? How many of you are engineers? What kind of engineer? What engineering? Really? So, are you aware that there's something called the alternating current? Yeah, the alternating current was, of course, one of the great inventions of Nikola Tesla. But Tesla could not figure out how to avoid losses when a current alternates. And Steinmetz was this genius who had come from Austria or Germany. He was German speaking. Before the First World War, he had come to the United States. He was a very ugly person. He was only 4 feet 8 inches tall. He had a hunchback. He couldn't speak English. And when he landed at Ellis Island, they threw him out. They said, nobody could understand what he was saying. And they threw him out. And he sort of was going back when he was rescued by a guy called Ickenmeyer. And Meyer had a motor workshop in New York. He put him into a workshop. And soon it became apparent that Steinmetz was a genius. Yeah? And everybody wanted it. So much so that the great Thomas Alva Edison wanted to recruit Steinmetz. So he goes up to Steinmetz and says, how much money do you make? He told him a figure. He says, I will pay you 50 times. Come and join my General Electric. Steinmetz said no. So he kept upping the money, and Steinmetz kept saying no. So Edison was puzzled. He said, why do you want to stay with this fellow, this motor maker, this guy? Yeah. So he said, when I wanted a job, he came to my. That is another form of commitment, yeah, which is obligatory. And that is where you want your sort of employees to be. If you can get that sense of obligation or the value system, not that they don't leave you because they don't want to go anywhere, yeah, or they can't go anywhere. So eventually, it is said that Edison bought this company from this guy in Meyer, took out Steinmetz and gave the company back to him. Very interesting, right? How much he wanted, and this guy he came up with the laws of hysteresis. Have you heard of the laws of hysteresis? If you've done any serious engineering, yeah. How do you reduce losses in the ordinary? Huh? Who came to the director? That was Edison himself. Yeah? But he had this war going on with Tesla and George Westinghouse. You should study the history of what you study. Very important. But yeah, this is a very interesting story because it shows us that how important obligation can be in retaining people in an organization. So it's organization commitment behavior. Any question? What else? Any questions? So 3 types of commitment. One is continuance because of economic reasons. The other one is obligatory, like I talked about now. And the third is the value systems or the normative commitment. Yeah? So this, you heard the story, the story, a very interesting story with Steinmetz. There are several things you should read about it. Steinmetz didn't get married, but he adopted his co-researcher and his wife, and they had several children. So it is said that Henry Ford once visited Steinmetz because he wanted to know how to keep the headlights on his Model T headlights. This was about 1910. And when they were just beginning to talk about electrical engineering, so on and so forth, Steinmetz's granddaughter came and said it is bedtime. And so you should come and tell me a story. So he tells Ford that, look, it's her bedtime, I have to go and tell you a story. You can actually wait. And Ford was furious because nobody treated the great Henry Ford like that. So Henry Ford actually left. And he was going to the railway station. He said, let me go back and see what this fellow is. So about half an hour later, Steinmetz comes back and solves this problem in about 5 minutes. Yeah, he's a genius. He was like that. And when he was he was there, became a professor with MIT. And he used to teach electrical engineering. They say that only 5% people understood 5% of what he taught. Huh? He was that far above everybody else, but he was fascinating. So people went to his class. But so it is said that Edison once taught him to repair a motor in his General Electric. And he said, run the motor. And then he went around the motor 5 times and said, open this part, there's something wrong here today. So they did that. This is a common joke, actually, has several variations, but it happened with Steinmetz. And he sent a bill for $10,000, which was a lot of money for 100 years back. And Edison was furious. He said, $10,000 for just tapping on the casing. And he said, no, tapping on the casing is $1. Knowing where to tap is the more important part. So That's his story. So, okay, so perceived organizational support is how much do you think your organization really supports? Yeah. Do you feel, so for example, during COVID time, did they support? It's a rhetorical question. Yeah. Do you believe that if something goes wrong, they will continue to support you or not? Do you believe that or no? So if you believe that they won't support you, so for example, I was working with an organization once and we were caught. Again, many of you must have been very young or not born. 1998, caught in the storm of the west coast of India, and it eventually came and hit the Gujarat coast, and several people lost their lives and they were swept. Their bodies were swept to Pakistan. Ship was battered, so I told somebody that why don't you make a call to several of our crew, their homes. Those days we did not have cell phones, so forth, which is coming in, but make a front call or whatever, and inform their families that they're safe. So he said it will cost a lot of money. Yeah, so that is a lack of organizational support. So then you start having doubts whether these guys are really going to support you in terms of a crisis. And it so happened later on that we went to this great place called Calcutta. You been to Calcutta? The Calcutta port. And I was there, and there was a general strike in the port. And suddenly we had these communist fellows running all over the ship and putting red flags. And unfortunately, my crew also joined the strike. So it was a very tricky situation because we had nothing to do, we were hanging around. And I get a call from my office where HR guy, HR director, called me and said, Captain, is your crew on strike? I said, yes. So he said, close the galley immediately. So galley is the place where food is cooked. So I said, close the galley? He said, yeah, close the galley. Your crew is not working and don't feed them. I said, okay, how about putting this in packs? He said, I'm giving you an order. I said, sorry, chum, you can't give me an order. So if you have anything to say, please put it in the facts and I will think about it. So he put a fact there. Basically, it came. And then he called me a little later and said, have you got the facts? I said, yes, I've got the facts. I'm not following it. So he said, you will be, a lot of action will be taken against you and you will be sort of dismissed. And all. He said, okay, you can do whatever you want, but at the moment I'm not doing it. So then he calmed down. Then he said, why you don't follow my order? He said, because as captain, the crew are my responsibility. Yeah, their safety and security is my responsibility. So what you can actually do is to send the CISF or the police and get them off the ship. Because we are only some 15 officers and they are some 120 people. And I don't want to risk our lives, taking them on. So you get them off the ship and then do whatever you want. As long as they're on the ship, I'm going to feed these fellows. And I told them also that if you are not aware of this, go and read the Shipping Act, which is a part of the Indian Constitution. Yeah? Which he did, I think, eventually. But the fact of the matter is that these kind of thoughts enter your head if you perceive that your organization is not supportive. They don't back you. Yeah. So, any such instances in your office?
I got the series during this COVID. None of the employees were impacted. That's how we got pay. So we took care of our external employees, working on contracts and all.
Yeah.
So now, like they have feeling like we are working with such good organization.
It's not like working for Twitter. I'm running into Elon Musk. Yeah? So there's a very another interesting incident. You heard this term piracy, pirates. So in the shipping world, any small theft is called piracy. One of the worst ports in India for piracy is Cochin. Yeah, people sort of come on board and steal things. It is marked as a pirate invasion. So there was this oil tanker. It was discharging oil in Cochin port, and unfortunately, it was a moonless night, and three fellows wanted to steal something from the ship. So they came at the rear, sort of stern of the ship, and they were trying to sort of figure out. They had a kick-off meeting before sort of boarding the ship as to what we shall steal and how shall we plan this, how do we get on board. They did not notice that crude oil, because it had leaked, was all around the area. So before heading off onto the ship, one fellow decided to have a bead. And he took out a bead, smoked it, and threw it. So all three guys with the boat vaporized. Because there was a sheet of oil there, it caught fire, it was burned. Interestingly, the Kerala police arrested the captain and the chief officer for negligence and sentenced them to jail. They filed an FIR. It went to court, and the court had a similar opinion, notwithstanding the fact that these people were thieves or pirates. But the Shipping Corporation of India fought this case for about 25 years. And they fought it very vigorously, and finally they won the Supreme Court. So that is organizational support. When you support your people through difficult times, they are willing to stay with you and sort of are obligated in a sense. What do you think? You think this thing is? You think that who was right here? Was it negligence on the part of the ship? Of course, they spilled oil. You should not have spilled oil. What is your point of view? So MBA is always about having a point of view and defending it. That's the importance of MBA. So what do you guys think? Who was right here?
Was it okay that mistakes happened? They are cautious enough. They would have not.
They are not a problem. So even that later case where these Italians who, did you follow that case? There was an Italian ship which had armed Marines on board, and again off Cochin, there was a boat speeding towards them. So the fishermen say they were trying to sell them fish. And in a supercharged situation of piracy and all that, about 10-15 years back, the ship captain thought that these people who were coming to rob his ship. So even before he gave an order, those two Italian Navy guys opened fire at the machine gun and killed a few. And they were arrested, put in jail. Luckily for them, that time the UPA government was in power, and we have an Italian government, so they got away with it, and they were sort of allowed to go. I think in this time they might have still been in jail. Yeah, so they were just like. But these are very interesting: perception, decision making, attitudes. How do you react in a tight situation? All come together. That is why it's so fascinating. Employee engagement, the individual's involvement with satisfaction, with an enthusiasm for the work. That is, you are engaged. Engaged employees are passionate about their work, and so that is what is Passionate. Yeah. Are you passionate people or you just go there for the money? Be honest. Passionate. Both. Yeah, first the money, then you became passionate. Or you are passionate about money. So think about, reflect upon this because it's interesting. Yeah? Because if you're passionate, then you really start showing up in your, then you stand for the right things. You know, I am passionate about this, so I will not be disturbed. Yeah? So job attitudes are all like I said, like in this case of Italian Marines, it was about perception, decision making, maybe emotions and moods got in, attitudes towards the Indians, all Indians are thieves, kind of thing. And you know, they come into the war shit. We are first world, these are third world. So a lot of things would have gone in and they all affect each other. Okay. Skip all this, you can have a look at it. So what causes job satisfaction? Job conditions and personality. So you must understand. So why personality is so important? Because there are certain disgruntled people. And whatever conditions you can give them, they are you can't do it. How do you deal with such people? That's just to keep them out of the organization. Yeah, because once you get them in, it's very difficult to get them out. So don't, I mean, disgruntled people are always a bit of a problem because they are never satisfied. Yeah. So something called as core self-evaluation. What is core self-evaluation? When you get up in the morning and you look at yourself, take the toothbrush and then you stare at your face in the mirror. How many of you like what you see? I'm the most handsome man in the world, or beautiful woman. I like myself and I am going to really conquer the world. Who is sad? So that is core. What is your impression about your? And some people have very poor opinions about themselves. They feel that they're shortchanged, they feel that their parents are shortchanged, and their grandfather did not give enough money. They didn't get sufficient dowry. Various things go to their minds and they hate themselves. These kind of people can never be happy or satisfied with their job. And so it's tough for organizations find it very difficult to identify such people. Yeah. But the better you do it, the better, safer you are in your own organization. I was just reflecting because why I don't tell you like that. Who after he joined started complaining about the salary. As if nobody told him about the salary, right? So it took a while to sort of solve. And happened. So who will be getting those kind of messaging in the organization? How we can solve this message? So we get it so we can rescue people, how we can analyze it. So just my last class. So you can do psychometric tests. You can find out a person. So I can do what is called a Ising test. And do it one of these days. It will tell me what kind of a personality you have. Particularly, it will tell me how much you are lying on the test. Now, it gives me a good idea about if you are telling lies on the test. And it's a good thing to have. Also, you can also ask behavioral questions. First, understand thoroughly. And you can ask situational questions to see how people respond. React. So you must be very clear about what the. For example, when I used to teach the army class, lower level army class, I used to ask them, this is the situation. You are the HR manager for company. You will hear that there's a mob of 20 people charging towards your office with iron rods, with single-minded purpose of hammering. what will you do? What will you do? Run for your life. Yeah? Or hide under the table or the cupboard or wherever. Lock yourself in the office. But the army guys will never say. They will say we will stay and negotiate. They can't fight now because they're not an army. They say we will stay and is that the requirement of staying and negotiating? No. At that point of time, you see the class is over. Can you help me? Please. Want to come? Come. So, do they have job awareness? What is required in a particular job? Are you aware of what you should be doing? So, if you have left the Indian Army and you joined a private organization and somebody is coming to flatten you, now is the time, not the time to stay and fight and negotiate. Now is the time to run for your life and negotiate some other day. From a position of, I got caught like that once. Because I denied some students party. Some means many. So I was told by my bosses, so I, without thinking clearly, despite being warned by some of my colleagues, I did it. Because why? Honor is at stake. Yeah, I am Capt Nagaraj and I will what I'm going to do. And I got surrounded by some 70 people. And it was a little scary because all my faculty fled. I was alone. And there was a group of some 7-8 girls who were surrounding me right up front, just waiting for me to push one of them. All very well planned. And I just looked over my shoulder and one of my good friends from the Air Force, Flying Officer Kashmir Singh Kahania, he was a great guy. He was 6 feet 4 inches. He was standing there. Kahania said, and I didn't open my mouth. I kept my hand in my pocket and stood there smiling for 45 minutes. Eventually they got tired. I outwaited them. It didn't end there. Then I got hold of 15 of them and had a rusty. Yeah? And my time came 2 weeks later. Yeah? Then they came and of course not. So there's a time to fight and there's a time to run. Had I been captain, this would not have happened. But as a dean, of course, we have to deal with it because I'm the dean. I'm not a captain anymore. So you must be able to make that role shift very, very clearly because it's rather important. So, organization commitment behavior is of course, are you willing to do things beyond your call of duty? So, you're expected to do X. Can you do X plus something else? X plus alpha and so on and so forth. These are important things. Customer service.
In case if we are in the position of captain, what would have been the reaction for that?
So, for example, give you a story, illustrated story. So, the largest warship that India had in the end of 1960 was INS Mysore. It was a destroyer. And INS Mysore sailed out of then Bombay for a naval exercise. And that was the time that communism also was gathering steam in India. So several sailors were sort of influenced by communism. So they raised a ruckus on the ship saying that the food is bad. And they said we will not have food. So they all squatted on the deck. And INS Mysore carried more than 1,000 people. So they all sat on the deck and a lot of noise and said we want to have food. And then the captain sent his executive officer to talk to them. So they said we don't want to talk to you. The captain has to come down. So the captain went down and he talked to them, and a lot of things happened. They manhandled him. So he informed naval headquarters. They called the ship back to Bombay. The entire 1,200 people were changed. So this 1,200 people were taken off, including the captain. New 1,200 people went on board. Myself went out to exercise. Then they identified who were the ringleaders of this whole episode. So the ringleaders were sent on leave. Said, go home on leave, we will call you back. So 1968 to 2023 is into the math. They have never been heard of it. So their families were told that they have gone on leave. That's what the naval records show. Obviously, they were picked up somewhere in Bombay on the way to the railway station, BT railway station, and they disappeared. The message went through very clearly. You don't muck around with the ships. Yeah. So that's answering your question.
Immediately, the inside that facing those 200 guys, till the time of calling back this 200 people again,
you can't do much about it. So obviously the guy was smart, whoever killed. Yeah. So, but he has a lot more power than a team, poor team has. He can do several other things as well, which is court-martial team. But at that particular point in time, obviously the right thing is to keep quiet and go back to force, where you have a bigger force there, which can deal with such. But much to the Indian Navy's credit, they did not let it go. They dealt with it in the hardest possible way. Where those 10 fellows have probably they were taken to a torture cell in the Red Fort in Delhi. So the armed forces have got a torture cell in Delhi, in the Red Fort. Parts of it you cannot go to, where they beat people up and do several other nasty things. So the this doesn't happen all the time. Right. So okay, another thing that I would want to mention before we sort of move on right here is that the first sign of problematic dysfunctional behavior is when you see people absenting themselves, it's a start of a problem. It shows lack of interest. It shows lack of any kind of involvement and passion. Yeah. So the more satisfied you are, the less likely you are to miss work. So if somebody is not coming regularly to work or applying for long periods of leave, you know that there is a problem in what do you do in your organization when somebody applies?
We go back and check the agencies, how many leads they are.
Won't grant it. Then what happens? They say you lack empathy.
This is a situation which I came for this. Because one person has taken already 20 people in my again for this work I applied for 1 week.
Man, woman. But what do you do?
I said,
Then I hope you had somebody else in the room when you said, is it a cubicle or a room?
don't want that.
Let me see. Yeah.
See, was we have to see other employees was the same time. When they also applying for it, because
So that's a problem with Indian. Actually, bring context, other employees. So I have this running battle with my security where I stay. Because all the time I find the school bus parked in front of the main gate when I am leaving. So I tell him, why don't you tell the bus to park? Right. Then he said, nice shop, go, bacha log karna. So I tell him, don't bring bacha log into the picture. They have got nothing to do with this. This is between the bus and me. Why are you bringing children in this picture? The Indians are famous for this. They will twist the context. The context will shift. and some extraneous thing is brought into the picture. So because children means you can't argue. Children can do. So I wanted to, generally I'm a peaceful fellow. There was this joker who rides very quickly on his cycle. And couple of times I had narrow misses while going for a walk or coming back. So one day I told him, see, why don't you try one? You go up to the top of the slope, come full speed and apply the front brake. You will actually have a lot of fun. He went and complained to his mother. So she turned up one day. And she said that, look here, you can't talk to my son. That was a wrong line. Actually. So I told her, see, your son is endangering my safety. So I will talk to him. You are not endangering my safety. So why should I talk to you? So this argument happened. But I knew that this is a losing case. I can't argue. Because children, you can't hurt your way there. Yeah? Once they brought into the picture, it's better to retreat and walk away. Children and women. You agree? About, no, I learned this lesson from my students. I told you about this surrounding situation where about 10 females surrounded me. They were just waiting for me to push one. I would have ended up behind bars. So it taught me something also. Later on, two BBA kids complained about her professor, who was actually a nasty person. I didn't like him. And they said that he was harassing me. These girls were about 20, 21. And I tried to say, I was director of HR in the university. And I said, tell my boss, this is not my problem, it's the dean's problem. So let the dean deal with it. My boss said, nothing doing, Captain, you better sort this out. So, why? So everybody told me just fire the boss. But I conducted a proper inquiry. I brought 6 men, 5 men, did a solid inquiry. Finally, it was found that these 2 girls were mine. Yeah. So, while I have deepest sympathy for what men go through in organizations, you also find many unscrupulous people. You better watch yourself. And again, I leave to okay, so we'll have a break, yeah? I think there are no other questions.
Sir, previous conversation to the emotional aspect can be character. Personality can be changed. Now, attitude can be. Attitude can be.
What you cannot change too much is personal. So emotionally unstable people will remain emotionally. You can moderate it to some small extent, but you can't. It will surface under pressure. No? So you have to be very careful. Attitudes with the right. So that's why you find people who are. So finally, when you finish your MBA, I can tell you that your attitude towards several things will have. Why? Because you become more educated. And you've been educated by the right people like me. More important. I'm just joking. Huh? But the fact of the matter is that attitude can be moderated and but personality is very. But when you select people, please be very, very careful. Because once you get them into your organization, it's very difficult to change or get them out of your organization, particularly if they have behavioral issues, they have personality issues, they have issues with authority. So people, I found that people who had unhealthy relationships with their father generally have authority issues. They have a problem with anybody superior to them. So you will learn these things. They have this rebellious streak. Good. So we shall meet at what time? What's time now? Yeah.
11.
So guys online, we will meet at 11:17. Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir. Sure, sir.
Ah, so, yeah, can you just unmute it? Please unmute. So this is about, this is a Harvard case study, which I can send to you. Not part of your assignment, but if general reading is good. Talks about attitude of people. And Rohit Deshpande was an OB professor at Harvard Business School. It's a very interesting video. So you can sort of listen to this and sort of volume. I think this thing.
On the 26th of November 2008, as you just heard, a group of 10 terrorists attacked the city of Mumbai, what used to be called Bombay, in India.
So there is no sound, sir.
Teams to attack about a dozen different locations. One of those locations was the iconic, beautiful, 103-year-old Taj Mahal Palace Hotel in South Bombay. For 3 nights, 2 days.
So we are not able to hear anything, sir.
Absolute havoc in that hotel.
Going on. Yeah, maybe one person. Yeah, ask other people. Hello, people online, can you hear this video?
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So whoever cannot hear, either change your system or get your ears checked.
Guests were terrorized, people wounded, shot, killed. This group of terrorists with automatic weapons, plastic explosives and grenades in backpacks roamed freely through this old hotel. Many of us, many of you, witnessed or saw some of that coverage on television at home. Let's take a closer look.
The evening of November 26, 2008, was a typical busy Wednesday for the Taj. More than 500 guests were registered at the hotel. Another 500 to 600 were attending functions in banquet halls or sitting down to dinner in the hotel's 10 restaurants. Shortly after 9 p.m., an explosion rocked the Leopold Cafe just around the corner, less than 200 meters from the Taj. 2 young men pulled out automatic weapons and began firing. Crowds at the Gateway of India and along the street in front of the Taj panicked, many rushing the doors of the hotel. In the ensuing chaos, 2 heavily armed terrorists circumvented the metal detectors and entered the lobby. They were soon joined by the 2 attackers from the Leopold, who broke through a back door.
9:35 or 9:40 was the first call I got from one of my chefs. And I think some shooting is taking place. A person has been shot dead outside my restaurant. Then we heard another gunshot, and I told him on the phone only, I said, just close all the kitchens, all the restaurant doors.
They were banging the door. They were alerting everyone, come out, otherwise we'll shoot you. There were few guests who they were scared and they came out by putting their hands up, and they started hitting them, they started harassing them. It was horrible.
The situation, the entire scenario was very scary. We couldn't judge at that time what is exactly happening in the hotel.
It was a literally war situation. You can hear grenade lobbing around. You can hear the gunshot also.
We did not know the scale of the attack. We did not know what exactly was going on, where they were at that moment. And there was total chaos. My colleagues were trapped with guests in various places, asking me what should we do next.
So picture what's happening inside that hotel. There are 500 guests who are registered at that hotel this night of 26th November. There are an additional 600 or so guests who are in various restaurants, attending various banquets and functions. There are about 600 or so staff members on duty that night. Young people, many of them very young, 20, 30-year-old. Some of them, these staff members had only been working for a few years at this hotel. Many of them fathers and mothers, the sole breadwinners in their families with children at home waiting for them. One of the things, we don't know a lot about the detail about what happened there, but one of the things we do know is that all 600 of these employees knew all the back routes. They knew the exits, they knew the entrances, they knew the hallways, the kitchen galleys. In other words, they knew how to get out and how to get out fast. All the research we have in psychology would tell us that the natural human instinct at a time of terror like this is to flee. So think about it, what you would do. So when I teach this case study at Harvard, I ask my students, I say, how many of these employees do you think fled, and how many of them do you think stayed? And they'll hazard guesses, and the maximum, they say, that would stay would be maybe a quarter, 150 or so. But that's the maximum. Everybody who can run away will run away. Well, the truth of the matter is that nobody ran away. They all stayed. In fact, some of them not only stayed, they helped guests out and came back in to help more guests. It's an amazing story. These are some of their stories.
The staff of the Taj stayed on duty throughout the siege, calming frightened guests and assisting in their rescue. Many even came back inside after leading guests out of the building. Members of the hotel's team of telephone operators, originally evacuated, voluntarily returned to their stations and stayed on all night.
They became the hub of communication at that point. They were the ones calling every single guest room, talking to the guests and telling them to stay in, don't step out, lock your door.
As the terrorists roamed the halls, telephone operators instructed trapped guests to pull their key cards to turn off the illuminated occupied button in the hallway outside their doors.
The attack started at 9:30 in the evening. Till 4 o'clock they were answering guest calls. I think that speaks a lot for a hotel under attack.
Among the guests at the Taj that night were members of the Global Board of Directors and senior management team of Unilever, who had gathered along with their spouses to honor incoming and outgoing CEOs.
So we had this really elaborate 7-course meal, and that was sort of the setting, the mood. There was warmth, there was laughter, there was a perfect setting for a nostalgic farewell and a perfect setting for a nice welcome. And I heard what seemed to me, which is an untrained ear, like firecrackers in the hotel.
We started getting these text messages and phone calls. There were some gunmen on the loose. The only logical thing to do was to close the doors and just stay put.
Malika came to us and said, we think there's a problem. We're not sure what exactly it is, but I request all of you to be on the ground right now. The level of calm and composure that the staff displayed was amazing, was absolutely amazing, because they had the presence of mind to even advise us saying, couples please separate, don't stay at the same place, just be in different corners of the room.
65 lives at stake, so can't take a chance. So obviously we were in touch with security all the time and had a lot of alcohol in the room, so that helped a little.
This went on the whole night. We were on the floor with our hearts in our mouth, with debris falling all around us. The noises of, firecrackers all around. And all through, the staff kept their composure, kept coming to us saying, do you want some water, do you want something?
Well, I was scared, but there was something more important to be done.
And this went on till 4 or 5 in the morning when the room filled with smoke. So we had no choice but to find a way to escape.
The entire corridor outside the hall was on fire. So there was no way we could get out. The fire guys were outside and they were dousing the fire on the 6th floor. And we happened to see Mr. Kang downstairs as well. So he sort of ushered the fire guys to us.
We sort of climbed onto the ledge and did some stuff which in today's normal day I wouldn't be able to do, but we sort of came onto the ledge, climbed down to the ladders which by then the fire brigade people had come. The staff insisted that we would go first, guests would go first. And they kept like that till all of us had come down, and then they all came down.
Well, in a way, because I was there, I was looking after the function, I was responsible. I could have been the youngest in the room, and I know at one point of time I was the youngest in the room, but I was still doing my job.
The easiest thing for our staff to do at that point in time was to drop whatever they were doing and run out of the hotel. Not one did that. Not one.
I come from an army background, not myself, but my father, he retired as a general in the army. And he often used to say, when I was even appointed here as the general manager, he used to often tell me that you are now like the captain of the ship. And I think that's the way you think, that you are the captain of the ship, and you have to be the last one to leave, and if it sinks, you sink with it.
At some point, our kitchen brigade decided that it looked like a lull in the thing and they could be taken out from the back of the kitchen through the fire exit to the back road. And our chefs had formed a human chain to escort people in the darkness down those stairs. And as hundreds of them were being evacuated, somehow 2 of those terrorists got to know that this was happening. And the terrorists arrived there and saw these chefs lined up, herding people away, and there was mayhem. They cut loose, and that's where we lost our biggest numbers there. We had 5 or 6 of our chefs gunned down, but they took the bullets.
Said that they risked their lives in just making sure the guests were safe.
I don't think we would have made it out of the hotel without the support, the assurance, the constant service orientation that the staff provided, without doubt, which is why we will continue to be so grateful to them.
I can't explain it. There were no manuals, there were no instructions for what should be done under the circumstances. So what seems to have happened is individuals, from the waiters to the managers of the restaurants, all had this goal of let's get the guests to safety.
To reiterate, 500 registered guests, 600 guests in restaurants and banquets like that Unilever Boer event that you just heard about. 600 employees. So that's 1,700 people that night. Of those 1,700, over 1,600 escaped safely. Only 34 people died. Of those 34, fully half were staff members of the hotel. So when we were working on this case study, I asked senior management how this happened, why this happened, what explains the behavior of their staff. And these are young people. Malika Jagat, the banquet manager for the Unilever event, whom you saw speaking, 24 years old. What explains it? And you heard, they can't explain it. Senior management. Mr. Ratan Tata, head of the Tata group of companies, they own the Taj hotels, he couldn't explain it. So I teach this at Harvard. I bring this case study back and I teach this at the Harvard Business School as a case study of leadership from below. You know, we teach usually about leadership as being something from the top that filters down. This is leadership from below. It's just amazing. And I ask my students, how do you explain it? And they have plausible explanations for the behavior of the employees. Some of them say, well, it must be the culture, the national culture of India. You know, there must be something in the value system there that explains it. And in fact, there is. It turns out that there is a value or a belief that says a guest is to be treated like God. When a guest enters your home, treat her or him like God. Atiti Devo Bhava in Sanskrit. Other students say, no, 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 it's not national culture, it's corporate culture. If the Taj Hotels is owned by this family, the Tata Group, they have a long history in India of very benevolent human resource policies, a family of integrity in their business dealings. It's the corporate culture. And others say, no, it's not that. This happened at a hotel. It's the industry culture. It's hospitality. Employees are trained to serve customers. So that's what's going on. All of these are very plausible. So along with another colleague, I decided to go back into the Taj Hotel company records to try to understand their human resource policy. Who were these people? Who were this staff? Where did they find them? How did they recruit them? How did they motivate them? How did they train them? And I learned lots of really, really intriguing things. Let me share, in the interest of time, just 3 of them with you. First, about recruiting. You know, they recruit their frontline employees from high schools, not from the major cities, not from Bombay or Delhi or Calcutta or Madras. They recruit them from small towns. Haldia, Chandigarh, Nashik, Tiruchirappalli, small towns. And they recruit students, graduating students, for attitude, not grades. They ask their headmasters or their teachers, who are the students that you teach who have the most respect for older people, for their parents, for the teachers? They're not looking for the students who do the best in grades, but rather for attitude. Then training. This is fascinating. You know, you've heard of brand ambassadors. Lots of companies, many organizations perhaps that you represent, train their frontline staff to be ambassadors for the brand, for the company. You know what they do at the Taj Hotels? They train their frontline employees to be ambassadors for the customer, for the guest. It's very different. It's counterintuitive. They call them guest ambassadors. They believe frontline employees should be the voice of the client, of the customer, of the guest to the company. And third, and perhaps most importantly, their motivation system, their reward system, incentives, is not just monetary. They pay about average, little above average in that hotel sector in India. But they reward people with recognition, personal recognition. So when an employee does something that delights customers and the guest writes a note, within 48 hours that employee is recognized. 48 hours. They don't have to wait for a Diwali or a Christmas bonus. It happens within 48 hours. Amazing. In fact, they won the International Hermes Award for an innovation in human resource management for this STARS program. So let me close by asking you to think a little bit about the lessons that you take away from this company far away on the other side of the world, the things that we can learn here in America, that we can bring home, that we can scale to American businesses, American organizations. Things like the way customers are treated, building a customer-centric, guest-centric corporate culture, organizational culture, rethinking the relationship, the contract between employer and employee. And finally, let me close by saying this is an amazing, inspirational story that something that was supposed to be a symbol of terrorism is today a beacon of hope. Thank you.
It's very interesting. So I'll send you the case, you can read it. And it probably talk a little bit more. But leadership, motivation, attitude. No, the one on motivation. No, first. Okay. So I'll talk a little bit about just 11:15, 11:10. So motivation is again fascinating subject, and all of you, if you want to be good managers, need to learn how to motivate people. What motivates people exactly is something that you should be able to answer clearly. What motivates people? The regards of Madam here is the money. What else? So we look at some theoretical constructs of motivation. What happened over the last 100 years or so? Anybody else? What motivates people? His job itself. Values. What value you are creating? It's very individualistic. What motivates one person? Fortunately, you have general consensus with what seems to motivate people. So there are really rock solid, well researched motivational theories. We will go through some of them and you can see how they sort of pan out. When you're talking about motivation, I also want to be. So when we talk about motivation and leadership, we talk about the good things. Yeah. For example, we reward people, recognize people. And you remember I told you a story about Vasco da Gama and how we do something, 10 people to see. Also a form of motivational coercion. And like the great Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, speak softly but carry a risk. Also a form of, right? Speak softly but make sure people see that. Yeah. So is also a form of motivation. So motivation is a process that accounts for individuals' intensity, direction, and persistence. So first, your own intensity, direction, and what is persistence? Persistence. Yeah, persistence means what? Are you ready to hang in there? You know, it's difficult. Stick on. It's difficult. So, are you ready to sort of say that I'm not going to give up and keep going? So persistence is very important. I think critically, a lot of people fail because they are not persistent enough. They have no faith. And then they give up the first sign of resistance or problems. So the levels of motivation varies both between individuals and within individuals at different. So you can actually read stories of several Holocausts, that is Hitler's 6.5 million Jews, some of them who survived. How did they survive? What motivated them to survive? What made other people just give up and die? And so on. So very interesting how people go through this process. In that sense, our friend there is right. He talks about individual variation. Yes, so the theories say that individuals respond to motivation differently at different times. That is true. Although large masses of people fall under some constraints. So the oldest and sort of oldest theory in existence is the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it has got echoes in our own philosophy because Maslow's gurus were deeply steeped in Vedanta. They were Americans, but they read Vedantic literature. You will find echoes of what happens in India. So what Maslow said is that when people look at how they're motivated, they have different levels, and the first is the physiological level. That is fundamentally, what is physiological level? Yeah, so roti, kapda, you have clothes, we have food, we have house, and so on and so forth. And then you have safety and security. If I have all these, then do I have safety? So, for example, I wrote an article some time back where I asked a lot of women, like research that suppose you get a job in Delhi, you don't work. Most people hesitate. Why? Safety and security. So it is dear to a lot of human beings. Safety and security is a concern. So you have people fleeing from say war zones area. Like Sri Lankans during the civil war in Sri Lanka, they fled to different parts of the world. You had several Kashmiris fleeing from Kashmir in the strife. You have people leaving the area, in their safety and security. It goes to organizations as well. Organizations which are unsafe, that is, cannot provide safety and security for their individuals. And there's a again very interesting case of Alcoa. Have you heard of Alcoa? Aluminum Corporation of America, one of the biggest public sector companies owned by the government, doing very, very badly. And they finally hired a bureaucrat to head Alcoa. And the share price was doing badly because Alcoa was making losses. And they called him, in the United States, they called him to Wall Street for a meeting. They called him. They said, what is the first thing you want to do? He said, I'm going to look at safety record. People were shocked. They said, this fellow is talking about safety when he should look at more important things. And actually, we fixed this every year about 5 workers died in Alcoa because of poor safety conditions. He fixed it, and their profitability shot up because people became more productive, and they were motivated to work harder. So don't underestimate safety and security. Job security also comes under that genre. And then social belonging. So people feel they are part of something. Are they part of a team, a group, a committee, a circle, or whatever? Social belongingness is very, very important. Esteem, your recognition, positions. Are you recognized for the job you do? And eventually, it doesn't matter. When you reach my age, you figure out that if $1. Yeah, you achieve self-actualization, and you really enjoy what you are, what you want to do. And all these things really did sort of matter. So I have not seen too many people who are self-actualized, where they just work because they love to work, or they enjoy working. So the problem with Maslow was that he said you can't go from here to there without experiencing this. So you can't straight away land up in esteem needs. You have to go through this process. Yeah? That was Maslow's hierarchy of needs, one of the more popular ones. What do you think? You agree with it? Or no? So Maslow's need theory has received wide recognition, particularly among practicing managers. It's logical. It's intuitively logical. Yeah? Okay. So another interesting theory is Herzberg's two-factor theory. Herzberg said something interesting. He came after Maslow. These are the fundamental theories of motivation. Herzberg said that, look, I know that Maslow said something. However, suppose I take you to an office. I hire these 2 ladies to do presentation, and I call them to my office. Cool. And as soon as they enter, they find the office is dirty. They don't have a proper place to sit. They say put next to the toilet door, and it's smelly. So would you be demotivated? So first one said yes. They will be demotivated. However, let's think of the converse. Suppose I take these two ladies and put them in a 5-star like environment and make them sit there. Will they be motivated to work? As Herzberg said, they are not motivated, but they are satisfied. Yeah? So he said, just by providing good policies, good working conditions, so on and so forth, good money. He put money into the category. He said, just by giving them more and more money, giving them good working conditions, policies, so on, you don't motivate people, you just satisfy. Because that is what it is. So what do you do to motivate people? And then he came with several other things. So he said that those are hygiene factors. Hygiene factors are good working conditions. So if you want to motivate people, you have to give them something called as a motivator. It is which is things like recognition, quality of work, esteem needs, yeah, promotions, and challenging work. Herzberg was the first guy who said if work is not challenging, you're going to have problems at the workplace. Yeah, you give very boring jobs to high achievers, they are going to. So, for example, let's ask my friend. Other than the top tier, how many IITs do you have? So the problem is that most of them get bored with the quality of work and they will. Infosys went through this cycle. Yeah, they had many of these companies, HCL, Shiv Nagel actually hired from all the toppers from all the IITs, they all ran away with it. Why? It's not the money, it's the challenge of the job, which was not good enough for several of them. Yeah, so that's the problem. So Herzberg is fascinating here. Although there is criticism, he says there are hygiene factors and motivators. You must distinguish clearly between hygiene factors and motivators, and don't mix up the two. Just because you give, that's why I said, just because you take people for thank God it's Friday parties, cricket matches, fun Friday. Everybody gets done. So it really doesn't work. It might be a hygiene factor, but if you want to really motivate people, you must look at the quality of the job. And don't keep throwing money at people. Eventually it stops money. That's very important. So that was Herzberg's two-factor theory. And then we come to McClellan. This is a fascinating thing. McClellan said that people have needs. All human beings have needs. Right? As Maslow said. And he said that fundamentally people have three needs. That is, need for achievement, need for power, and need for. So how many of you are concerned about what other people think about? Not concerned at all. How much? Is it a primary driver? I mean, are you really concerned that people should like you? So that is a high need for affiliation. Yeah. Some people have a high need for achievement. You look at all these police films, they have a high need for power. Some people are driven by power. So I was watching this fascinating serial called Capt on Netflix. It's a video in Bihar. And they asked that young officer, why do you want to join the IPS? And he said, I want the power that the uniform gives certain power. I want that power. Through that power I can get. So generally you would want people with high needs for achievement. Yeah, you don't want power hungry people are politicians. Yes. Communities here, can you move please? Okay, so and then you have the need for so what are some features about high achievers? So they have this need for achievement. What else? What else? High achievers. So they did an interesting experiment in the United States. They brought a lot of people like you in that last week. Many of us are fascinating by this, but they do experiments. Here we like to sit in the chair and talk. Yeah? And they gave them all a set of tennis balls. And they put buckets. So the closest bucket was about 2 feet away. And if you put the ball into that bucket, you got 5 balls. And there was another bucket which was 10 feet. And you put the bucket, ball into the bucket, you got $50. And there was a third bucket which was 30 feet away. If you push the ball into the bucket, you got $200. So $10, $50, and $200. They brought all these people. They identified who were the high achievers. They wanted to see what they did. Which bucket do you think they went? Second. None of them went for the third, which was almost difficult. So high achievers are like they the risks, and then they go for something. If they find it risky, they try to mitigate the risk. They try to reduce the. So a lot of people think that high achievers are risk driven. They are not. Only foolish people are risk driven. Yeah, that's why they fail. High achievers are careful about they assess the risk carefully, and if it is unavoidable, they try to reduce the risk. Yeah. So McLuhan's theory of needs is fascinating, and you should look at it. Okay. And then you have self-determination theory, focuses on the beneficial effects of intrinsic motivation and harmful effects of extrinsic. What is intrinsic and extrinsic? Intrinsic. What drives you internally? Yeah. Extrinsic is what is the size of your car? How big is your apartment or house? Yeah. What do your friends say about? Do your friends envy you? So, for example, what is the difference between, say, a very rich person and a beggar? Actually, there's no difference. One is displaying his wealth, the other one is displaying his poverty. What is it? You agree? That's the philosophical point. Yeah. So, self-determination theory talks about: are you internally driven by some factors or set of factors, or are you driven by external factors? Like what do your neighbors think? Yeah. So a lot of my students ask me, sir, why do you leave a glamorous job of being a captain and come to become a poor professor? Because you won't understand. Yeah, because we are talking about extrinsic factors of motivation, which and they don't have the wisdom to understand the intrinsic part as yet. So many old people also don't understand the intrinsic and extrinsic. So cognitive evaluation theory works with people who work in NGOs. Yeah, people who are not paid for the work there. Again, many people working in a BPO might earn much more than a young army officer. Why does that young army officer go and risk his life? Yeah, for almost nothing. The cognitive evaluation theory, when people are paid for work, it feels like something they want to do, and more something like they have to do. So the army always talks about motivation, serving the country, a cause bigger than yourself. That is their normal mantra. Yeah? They don't talk about us. Now the fellows have stopped Scotch whiskey. Earlier they used to get Scotch whiskey at subsidized. The Modi government has put some halt on it for some reason. But anyway, so you can read some of these theories. They are fascinating. And of course, you have more modern management. Locke's goal setting theory. So Locke said that if you set people goals, they are motivated. Yeah? Is it true? Okay. Yes or no? Yes. So I actually tried this on my experimental little bit on my son. Very young. Said if you get more than 95%, you get 100%. If you get 99 to 100, you get 200. If you get less than 90, you don't get it. And so several people told me it doesn't actually works. He motivated, and then he didn't know what to do with the money. So eventually, so he give it back. And basically, he was telling me if I actually had all that money, I was richer right now. So yeah, but he gave it back. So anyway, so goals, Locke said goals. What's the problem with goal setting? What's the problem with goal setting? It's a good theory. What's wrong with it?
We don't have clarity to do it.
We don't have clarity, yes, or they are unachievable goals. Should set smart goals, yeah. So clear goals, which everybody understands, and they should be realistic. So tomorrow I will say, go and climb Mount Everest. It's possible. So it's not realistic. So that is one. What is the bigger problem with the goal setting? Not acceptable by everyone. Can you qualify? So you're right, but not entirely. So you can't tell your boss your goals are not acceptable. We'll show you the goal.
As this goes on, what are the company goes and the employee numbers in their methods, they view income different and they view different. So this goals will be set by management, the company will start. So this goes on, they will not.
You're right in a sense. You know, the problem with goals, see, for example, my kid also, I told him you get more than 95, I'll give you 99 to 100, I'll give you. Did he have any say in this? So that is the problem with the goal setting. Generally, the manager will set the goals and you follow like sheep. So there's this guy called Peter Drucker who came up with something called as management by objectives. And he said that a better way, improvisation of Locke's goal setting theory was to involve the employees and have a, maybe that's what you follow, where both of the manager and the employee sit together and discuss the goals, where the manager says, I want this done, and you say, okay. That's not how it works. No. You also have pushback a little bit. Say, it's not realistic. So that is management by objectives, and they also today companies link their goals or objectives clearly with the vision. So today, if you can't, how many of you know your company's vision? If you can't, if you don't know, please go and read it. Yeah, because that is where your goals actually stem from. It should be a clear-cut connection between your goals, your mission statement, your vision statement, and your objectives. They should be in perfect alignment. So, I am a really good cadence. Not joking. I'm really good. Recently, I won the Diamond Sagar. Right? But I can tell you that I can beat most students. In fact, last year I read the student champion at cadence. But has this university hired me to play cadence? They have hired me to lead the school. Yeah. So you must be very clear what your role is in the organization and is it aligned with the vision of the organization. There must be a clear connection. If there is not, there is no connection, then there is a problem in your. So there's a fascinating story of those of you who have been to America. There's a drug called Tylenol. Tylenol is for pain. If you notice, I want one working well back. It's difficult to work. So it belongs to Johnson and Johnson. Yeah? And what happened in the 70s, Steiner gave about 75% of the market share that was captured in the painkiller. Made a lot of money for Johnson. Some character fed cyanide tablets to Apple. And about 15 unsuspecting people bought it and they died. And actually, Johnson and Johnson withdrew every single bottle from the. They spent a lot of money on advertisement. They withdrew all the bottles. They changed the locking. So that's why I say it's not big. It's very difficult to open the bottle. You must really know what you're doing. And they lost several billions of dollars in the 90s. And they lost market share. But they said our vision is that we are representing our doctors, the doctors represent our customers, and so we stand by both those people and we don't want to compromise them. See, so very clear connection between what they do and what they talk. Yeah. Yeah. So you can look at an MPO, and you have overall organizational objectives, you have divisional objectives, you have departmental objectives, and finally it stems to. This is where you meet your boss, and he meets his boss, and there they meet the team and the members of the. And if this is not clear, your company is in. Yeah, okay. So we will sort of like talk about the self-efficacy theory. Yeah. So the self-efficacy theory came from a guy called Albert Bandura. Please read these theories. There in your textbook. Albert Bandura. So Bandura said that for you to do really be motivated, you must have control over your job. Yeah? You must sort of know what you are doing. And he said you must have an active mastery. That is, you must master your job. How do you do that? How do you master the job? So everybody says that Vinod Kambli was more talented than. But there is a world of difference. Why? Because of the amount of work that Tendulkar was probably willing to. They say nobody worked harder than Dravid. And people say that when we saw Dravid for the first time, nobody thought he would become the kind of a batter but he was willing to work harder than most. So an active mastery is about really working hard at what you want to do. Yeah. And then you have something called as vicarious. What is vicarious modeling? So how many of you went and watched Bahubali 3? So Albert Bandura says instead of watching Bahubali, go and read about achievers or watch them. Watch Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or Narayan or Razim Premji and see what they did. And vicarious modeling is model yourself after such rather than living in a fantasy world. And you will be successful. So I had a very interesting experience where again it comes back to my table tennis school. So I used to play a lot of PT in my chip. Evenings were free and like I said, that's pretty good. So I had an active mastery part. So my wife, when she said, I also want to watch. What shall I say? Have you ever played? Then you will not be able, you won't appreciate it. Which is rather cruel, I think. But she would insist and say, no, I want to come. So one day she said, I will play. So I said, you have never played in your life. What will you play? She said, no, I will try. And actually, he played quite well. I was amazed. And I asked her, you must have played in school or somewhere. He said, no, I come from a small village. We had no table tennis. First time I think this game. So just by watching, you can actually pick up a lot of things. You can train your brain to perform motor functions by just watching. It's called vicarious modeling. The secret here is to watch the right people. Not go and watch how to make it.
Currently, there is no Sarimapa went his way. Many people of rural background who are training our team. By watching the things, they started singing well and they are performing well. Good for it.
I find it difficult to do. But I've not been able to sing. In fact, you know, when I went for my honey, those days we had to eat, not exotic places like today. And there was a campfire and all that stuff, and they said everybody has to sing. So I tried to dodge that. And finally, I sang a song from the Beatles. I heard the Beatles. The Beatles were a big time in the 70s. So they've got a very famous song called P.S. I Love You. So I tried to sing that song. After about 2 minutes, I said, "You're exempted." So this once every time. So, but anyway, but vicarious modeling is about watching the right people and learning from them. Verbal persuasion is talk yourself on. You tell yourself, you talk to yourself. You talk to yourself every morning. I am the most amazing person for it. And you will sort of get yourself. Talk positively. So I was very nervous when I had to go for my captain's exam. And my father told me that, you know, every day morning, every day when you go to sleep, think about scenario. Visualize that you will sort of, you are passed in the exam listening with Nagaraj, you are passed and you are jumping with joy. And I tried that. And it worked for me. They also worked hard. So what? But verbal persuasion, so I used to tell my son also that, you know, imagine that you are cracked with your student, your name appears in the list, you just brush this. We follow that. But nevertheless, verbal persuasion I think is very important. You should try it. You should sort of talk to yourself. If you keep feeding yourself negative information, I'm useless, I'm going to fail, I will not be able to do it. And that also gets into a negative spiral. It's not a great idea. And of course, arousal. Arousal is when you see people, so we need yes, our friend influence. So arousal is when you sort of, you see this cricket match and there are people going for huddle. We're all saying, let's kill the guys. Yeah, fundamentally. And they kind of get in charge. So obviously you don't arouse yourself when you want to play chess. Or you go for an exam. In physical way, football, and so on and so forth. Yes. So I will stop there. I will continue. Please remind me. Next class, I have to start off from where we stopped here. So I want to show that something. Can you just take me to Google? So just to show you what I'm talking about.
Fix करना दांतों का gap. It's as easy as घर बैठे ordering from a food app. Tootsie invisible teeth aligners fix दांतों का gap. Easy to put, easy to use, and easy on the pocket. अब smile fix करना है easy peasy. Tootsie, download the Mako app and put your can now.
Okay, so this is rugby, and this is the All Blacks, the New Zealand team, at whom they're playing. So just to give you an idea of what arousal means.
And now the All Blacks just waiting for the French to peel off the tracksuits, stand in front of them and receive the challenge of the haka. Well, the challenge has.
That is okay. We'll see you next week then. And I hope all of you are option about what your assignment one. Thank you. Okay. Any questions you have? How is assignment one going? Okay, so assignment 2 will soon be upon you. You have just that you finish assignment 1. And then nothing else, then put something. So assignment the future icon. Like, so please learn to get along with your until when we can submit until when we have largely to submit cutoff date. No, it shows comment and what's the so that is because they are following the American time. They are behind us by 12 hours.
Sir, we can't hear you.
You can't hear now, Minu? Can you hear me?
Yes. Now I can hear you, sir.
Nothing important was being discussed.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have any questions, Minu, for me?
Yeah, regarding the project, sir, the deadline is 7, but the time what is showing like 10 a.m. in the morning, is that the correct timeline or we will have the whole day?
No. So I suggest that to avoid all this confusion, you submit by 5th. Yeah, I think
we'll try. So yeah, sure.
So I've also put a rubric there that if you submit late, you will sort of use the marks. Yeah? After 1 month after the due date, I will not grade the assignment. So I suggest that all of you submit on time so that you get graded. So if you get actually about say 55 out of 60 for your assignments, you pass for it. Yeah. So whatever date is mentioned over there, you submit by that. Good. I think there's a time difference between Because the LMS, the Moodle is still following US time. That's it. If I have not sent this to the WhatsApp. So any of you want, I sent you an article also about something about life, right? Yesterday I sent you an article. Please read that. It's a fascinating article. What really is the meaning of life? Because by the time you finish this core program, I don't want you to carry a certificate from here and where you can get one. Kalasi Pale, 5,000. That's not the point. The point is that there should be a life-changing experience and they will learn something for the future. So please read as much as possible. I want every orientation somebody asks whether the library will open at 11 o'clock tonight, 12 o'clock, and then they don't read anything. Please read, ask me for articles. There are several hundred from the top B schools in the world, and I'll be glad to share them. Yeah. Okay, guys online, any questions? Anybody have any complaints?
Nothing from my side, sir.
No, sir. You are the spokesperson of the class.
Professor, just to summarize, the last date to submit the assignment is 5th, right?
Like you're very safe. You're very safe if you submit on 5th. If you submit on 7th also, I will not deduct it. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Professor. Yeah.
Yeah. So 5th, you are very safe. Target 5th. Outer limit is 7th. That should work, I think. See, guys. So first of all, I expect that you don't copy from me. That is that's the first expectation. Second one is what I said. Summarize it for me nicely. What have you understood? And also present a nice, make a nice video because I want to be your presentation skills. Please make sure that this is particularly the gentleman. When you make a video, don't send me a video with 100 codes in all languages. There is a start going by. I can't make out what you're trying to say. Generally, the women folk do a better job. So they obviously get better marks. So please take care. Be professionally dressed. Don't come and best person. Showing your muscles. Be professionally dressed. Everywhere, all presentations be professionally dressed. Speak well, no noise. Record a good. If you find that the video is short, you don't send it to me. Yeah? Do it again and do a good job. Do a professional job and stick to the point. You got 10 minutes to summarize how many articles. So have 2 minutes for each. Talk. If you read them, you know what is written in there. So talk about what you read. That's simple as that. Try to be innovative. Maybe you can walk around and instead of looking deadpan and feeling scared in a chair, put your anchor. Some of the not so intelligent people do a brilliant job because they try to be innovative. They have a great background. They speak well. And they get this. Particularly, what annoys me is when the diagram is bad. Yeah, and people are shoddily dressed. One fellow had come with wearing some goggles. Because I still can't understand why. Very dark. So please avoid things like that. Keep it professional. And yes, read the articles, it's important. Read them several times. You cannot do assignments by reading this like some story or something that's the whole history. I would suggest that you should read the article about 10 times.
These are survey based, practical data.
Yeah, they are, and they actually make a lot of sense. So the more such articles you read, the more articulate you are, the more you can discuss with your boss, impress them how much you know. The perception is. So the other day we had this young lady, this is senior, they were trying to find, so they're off the record, right? So, okay, guys, online, see you around then.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Yeah.